Hello everyone. So in this video, we'll be discussing the past year of Introductory Microeconomics, B Honors Economics, and this is of 2023. So we have already discussed for 2022. Now we'll be discussing it for 2023. So just going through the instructions. First thing, you're supposed to attempt any 5 questions. All questions carry equal marks and simple calculator is allowed. And you can use either Hindi or English, but you need to make sure that the same medium is used throughout the paper. Okay, now coming to the first question. There are 10 workers in Australia that produce, and each can produce either 2 computers or 30 tons of rice. So okay. So what we have is Australia, there are 10 workers, each can produce 2 computers or 30 tons of rice. And similarly, in India, there are 10 workers, they can produce 5 computers or 40 tons of rice. So in India, there are 10 workers, 5 computers or 40 tons of rice. Now, draw the production possibility curve for both the countries. So suppose if we draw for Australia, and here we have computers and here we have rice, and since the opportunity cost is same throughout, so the person can either produce computer or the person can produce rice, and the opportunity cost is same throughout, so it would be a linear curve. And if the opportunity cost keeps on increasing, the production possibility frontier turns out to be a outward board shaped curve. Okay, so if we're talking about Australia, I'll draw this with green. So if all the 10 workers are deployed to produce computers only, so the total computers would be 10 into 2, which is 20. So suppose we have 5, 10, 15, 20. So we'll have somewhere here. And if all the 10 workers are deployed to produce rice, we will have 300. So 50, 100, 150, 200, 250, 300. So this would be the production possibility frontier for Australia. The green one is for Australia. Now, draw the production possibility curve for both the countries. Now, if we are supposed to draw for India as well on the same graph, suppose I'm drawing it with red, the Indian worker would be able to produce 50 computers. So 50 would lie somewhere here. 50. And total rice that they can produce would be 400. So the production possibility curve would be like this. And similarly, if it is being asked to draw the production possibility curve of both the countries together, so the total production would be 70 computers and 400 plus 300, 700 radios. So it would be somewhat like this. Okay, so in this case, you can draw it separately as well. Okay, now moving on to the second part of the question. Okay, the second part states which country has an absolute advantage in production of computers. So you should know the difference between absolute advantage and comparative advantage. Okay, now in production of computers, so one labor in Australia can produce 5 computers, whereas one labor in India, in Australia it is able to produce 2 computers, and in India it is able to produce 5 computers. So the Indian worker has an absolute advantage in production of the computers, because one labor is able to produce more number of computers as compared to its Australian counterpart. Okay. Now coming to the C part, which country has a comparative advantage in the production of rice? Okay, now we'll see the opportunity cost. For an Australian worker, he can produce either 2 computers or 30 units of rice. So basically 1 rice is equals to 1 by 15 of computer. So this is the opportunity cost of producing rice. So if you're producing 1 more unit of rice, you are reducing the production of computer by 1 by 15th unit. Now for India, it is 5 computers for 40 rice. So it's equals to 40 R equals to 5 by 40 into C. So this is 1 by 8. So now what we can see is the opportunity cost. Okay, this is 2 by 30. So 1 rice is okay. This is also 5 by 40. So now the opportunity cost of producing a rice in India is 1 by 8 times computer, whereas in Australia it is 1 by 15 times 1 by 15 into computer. So the opportunity cost is lower in this case. So Australia would have an advantage in producing rice. I hope this was clear. Okay. Now we'll move on to the second part. So the first question has, okay, now you're supposed to differentiate between a normative and a positive statement. So the positive statements are based on facts and data, whereas the normative statements are based on value judgments. They're based on values, opinions. And the positive statements are dependent on facts and data. Okay, so this is page 2. We'll move to page 3. And now we are supposed to tell, are the following statement positive or normative? Introduction of minimum wage law causes unemployment in the labor market. So this is based on fact. So this is a positive statement. The unemployment rate should. So this is a value judgment only. Should be below 3%. So this is a normative statement. The third statement, increase in public health expenditure will increase the overall expenditure of the government. So this is also a fact, and this would be a positive statement. Okay. Now moving to the C part, use the concept of production possibility frontier. So you need to tell what a production possibility frontier is. It can be downward sloping. It is always downward sloping. It can be linear or bowed outward. So you need to tell in which particular case it could be if they ask to illustrate society's trade-off between two goods. So you can give the example of guns and butter. Okay. Need to tell about trade-off. Then you explain why PPF most likely has a bowed out shape. Show a point that is impossible for the economy to achieve. Okay, we'll do one by one. First thing, suppose we have 3 individuals in the economy, A, B and C. And guns we are producing here, we are producing butters here. So first individual can produce either 1 butter or 1 gun. The second individual can produce 2 butter or 1 gun. The third individual can produce 3 butters or 1 gun. So if all of them are deployed in producing guns, the total number of guns that we can have is 3. And if all of them are deployed to produce butter, the total number of butters we will have is 1 plus 2 plus 3, which is 6. So now suppose we are at this point, at point 6. Now, if I want to increase, so suppose Ukraine goes for a war and you are the policymaker for Ukraine, you would need to increase the production of guns. So which particular worker should you transfer from the production of butter to the production of guns? Think from your point as well. So effectively, you should transfer A, because initially butter is 6, guns are 0, and now if you transfer A, guns would be 1 and butter would be 5. Whereas if you transfer C, guns would be 1, butter would be 3. because C was able to produce 3 units of butter. So your total production would fall as compared to this case. So A is the least efficient in production of butters. So you will shift A. So we would get to this point. Then for B, you should, then for the second, if you want to increase the production of gun by 1 more unit, you should switch B from production of butters to production of guns. And it will lead to reduction of 2 units of butters. So this is 3, this is 2. So you will have a curve like this. Okay. So, and it is an outward shape. The curve is bowed outward. So this indicates that the opportunity cost, the marginal opportunity cost of producing the goods is increasing throughout. So you can see in this example itself, to produce 1 unit of gun, you were foregoing 1 unit of butter. But now to produce 1 more unit of gun, you are foregoing 2 units of butter. And if you want to increase the production of gun by 1 more unit, you will forego the production of butter by 3 units. So this opportunity cost is always increasing. Okay, trade-off, you can show various points. So at this extreme point, you are producing only gun, a combination of guns and butter. And here you are producing only butter. Okay, explain why. Show a point that is impossible for the economy to achieve. So first you need to give the definition of production possibility frontier. So it's a graphical representation which shows the combination of two goods that can be produced given the resources that the country has, that an economy has. Now, any point which is impossible. So all these points are achievable. So any points outside it won't be achievable. Then we are supposed to show a point that is feasible but inefficient. So any point below this, below the curve, this is achievable, but this is inefficient because there are some of the resources left which are not being utilized. Okay, so we are done with second, we're done with third. Okay, now, okay, third. So this was the first question only. Then fourth, this is an Hindi version. Okay, now coming to question 2, first part. Calculate elasticity of demand and elasticity of supply at the equilibrium price for the given demand and supply function. So we know at equilibrium, the quantity demanded would be equals to quantity supplied. So 80 minus 6p equals to minus 10 plus 3p. So we have 90 equals to 9p. This implies price is 10. If price is 10, quantity would be, you can either put in quantity demand or in quantity supply, you will get the same value. So the quantity would be 20. Now elasticity of demand is change in Q upon change in P into P by Q. Differentiating this, we have change in Q D equals to differentiation of 80 would be 0 because it is a constant, minus 6 into change in P. So change in Q by change in P would be equals to minus 6. So we have minus 6 into P. P was 10, quantity is 20. So this is minus 3. So elasticity of demand is minus 3. Now, similarly, we can find the elasticity of supply. On differentiating, we can see change in Q by change in P equals to 3. Change in QS by change in P equals to 3. And elasticity of supply is change in Q upon change in P into P by Q. So this would be 3 into 10 upon 20. So this is coming out to be 1.5. Okay. So you just need to equate price and quantity, and then you can use the formula. You just need to differentiate it so as to get change in Q by change in P. Now coming to the B part, a technological advancement reduces the cost of making computers enormously. So use supply and demand diagrams to show what happens to the equilibrium price and quantity in the market for software. So if there is technological advancement in the market for computer, we know the supply curve, because one of the inputs price is falling, the supply curve would shift towards the right. And hence there would be a fall in the price level of the computer. PC to PC star. The price level has actually reduced. Okay. Now, what happens to the equilibrium price and quantity in the market for software? Now, since software is a component of computers, and since price of computers has fallen and quantity of computers has increased, the demand for software would increase. So I'll draw it with red. So initially, suppose this is a market for software, price of software, quantity of software. Now demand, supply. Now demand would increase because computers are becoming more cheaper. So the price, so the initial price was this, and price has increased, and the quantity supplied has equilibrium quantity, which would mean equilibrium, which would mean quantity demanded and quantity supplied both have increased. Okay. Now this was for computer market. This was for software market. Now B part, we have done this. What will happen to the price and quantity in the market for typewriters? Since computer and typewriter are substitutes. So if price of computer falls, the demand for typewriters would fall as well, because the computers are becoming more cheaper. So you can show that the demand curve would shift inwards. So the demand curve would shift inwards. You will be stuck here. So this is the market for typewriters. So the price falls and so does the quantity. So both of them have fallen. Whose producers will be happy, typewriter or software? Now you can see the total revenue. Initially it was this area, whole green. Now it is this area only. So the typewriters producers are not happy because the total revenue has fallen. Whereas in the case of software, you can see initially, okay, I'll draw this with blue. This is the new total revenue, whereas the initial total revenue is this much only. So the total revenue for the software producers has actually increased. So the software producers are more happy. Okay. Now we have done this. Coming to the C part. What are the factors that influence elasticity of demand for any good? So proportion of income spent, availability of close substitutes, proportion of income spent. If a high proportion of income is being spent on the good, the elasticity would be high. And availability of close substitutes. So if you have very close substitutes available in the market, then the elasticity would be high. Because if the price increases of the concerned good and the substitutes are available, the person would easily switch to the other good. Okay, now the time horizon. So if you're talking about a longer duration time period, then elasticity is bound to be more. Okay, then it depends upon your addiction or preference. So if you are addicted, or if you prefer a single commodity, a single type of perfume over other brands, so irrespective of what the price is, your demand won't change by much. So in that case, it would be inelastic. Okay, these 3-4 factors are more than enough. Now moving on to the second part of the question. What are the factors that influence the elasticity of demand for any good? We have done. Suppose the price elasticity of demand for X is about 0.3. So ED is given to us 0.3 and the current price P0 is 60. By how much should the government increase the price if it wants to reduce the consumption of the good by 30%? So we know ED is percentage change in quantity demanded upon percentage change in price. So 0.3. So we need to reduce it by 30%. We need to reduce the consumption by 30%. So by percentage change in price. So the change percentage change in price should be, okay, this would move here, minus 30 upon minus 0.3, minus cancels out. So 100% change should be there in the price. Now current level of price is 60. With 100% change, it would become 120. So the new price level should be 120 so as to reduce the demand of the good by 30%. Okay, so we are done with this. Now, okay, now we are moving to we are doing third question. Okay, we'll do the third question first. Okay, the quantity demanded and supplied for apple is given by, calculate the equivalent price and quantity of apples. So you can just equate, this would be quantity demanded would be equals to 170 minus 2p. This should be equals to quantity supplied, which is minus 10 plus p, which is equals to. So at equilibrium, both of them should be equal. So we have 180 equals to 3p. This gives us price equals to 60. And similarly, you can plug this price in either quantity demanded or quantity supplied. Then the equivalent quantity is coming out to be 50. So 170 minus 120, 50, minus 10 plus 60 is also 50. Okay. Now the government passed a law that introduces a statutory minimum price for apples at 70. So it is a price floor because it is above the equilibrium price level. Explain the resulting change in market price, quantity demanded, and new consumer surplus and producer surplus. Okay. So I hope you must be aware with what consumer surplus and producer surplus are. I'll just draw it here. Okay, quantity was 3p, p was 60, quantity was 50. Okay, now when price is 0, quantity demanded is 170, and when, so this axis would be when quantity demanded is 0, so price is 85. So we have something like this. Whereas for the supply curve, when price is 0, quantity supplied is minus 10. So it would be here, minus 10. You need to be very careful when drawing these curves. And with a slope of +1, so it would be like this. This is the supply curve, this is the demand curve. Now, initially we have found equilibrium, quantity was coming out to be 50, price was 60. Now if the government has imposed a minimum price of 70, so this is the price level 70. The consumer surplus, what we are supposed to find, the new change, the resulting change in market price. So at price 70, this is the quantity demand, this is the quantity supplied. So the quantity demand would be putting the price 70 here, 170 minus 2 into 70. So this is 170 minus 140, which is 30. So the quantity demanded is 30, whereas the quantity supplied is minus 10 plus 70, which is 60. So there would be an excess supply of 30 units. Okay. So the market price is coming out to be 70. This is 70. Quantity demanded is 30. New consumer surplus and producer surplus. So the consumer surplus would be this area in yellow. This is the consumer surplus above the price level and below the demand curve. So the consumer surplus would be half into 15 into 30. So this was the base. So it would be half into 15 into 30. and this is coming out to be 225. This portion is the deadweight loss. The producer surplus would be this area. I'll draw in red. Okay, so we don't know what this intersect would be. Look at the black point. We don't know what this intercept is. So at quantity 30, what is the price? So at quantity 30, what should be the price such that this equation is satisfied? So when quantity is 30, so 30 equals to minus 10 plus P. So price becomes 40. So this would be price 40. So you can find the area of this, and this intersect also you can find it. So looking at the supply curve, which is QS equals to minus 10 plus P. So at this point, the quantity is 0. So the price would be 10. So you can find the area of the trapezium. If you know the formula of the trapezium, that is totally fine. You can use that, or else you can use the area of this rectangle, which is 30 into 30. So 40 minus 70 minus 40 into the length into breadth, and then the area of this small triangle, the shaded one. So this would be half into 30 into 30. So this would be 15 into 450, 1350. 900 plus 450, you will get 1350. Okay, so first part is done. Now looking at, so since the price has increased, it is expected the consumer surplus would fall and the producer surplus would rise. Okay, you are not supposed to compare the initial and the new consumer surplus. Okay, now coming to the B part, explain whether the following statements are true or false. Pizza and cold drink are considered complementary goods. So it is expected, yeah, that they are complementary goods. If the price of pizza decreases, the quantity demanded for both goods will increase. So you know the indifference curve is like this. So suppose we have pizza here, cold drink here, and if the ICs are going like this, if the price of pizza decreases, then the new budget line would be like this, and you would prefer to go on a higher IC. So this is IC1, this is IC2. So you will prefer to consume on a higher IC. So this statement is true because you will tend to purchase more of both the goods because they are complementary. So it would make sense to buy both of them. Okay. Now looking at B part, a drought in the entire state raises the total revenue that farmers receives from the sale of rice. But a drought only in one district reduces the total revenue received by farmer of that district. So what happens is, if there is a drought, you should know it would impact the supply, and the supply would shift towards the left. So what we can see is the prices are rising. So if it is for the entire state, then the consumers don't have any other option. Okay, this was like, okay, if it is for the entire state, then the consumers don't have any option. So the demand is relatively inelastic if we compare it for the entire state. But so if it is inelastic, then we can see as the supply curve shifts, the price level would increase, and since the demand for the whole state is inelastic, so the total revenue would increase. So you need to use the total revenue method here. And if it fails only in one district, then there is availability of close substitute. That is, the other districts will supply their outputs to the specific district in which there is drought, and hence only the revenue of the farmers, those farmers in the particular district would fall. Whereas the other farmers in the state would come and sell their product here. Okay, so this was also very straightforward. So we are done with this 7. Now we'll move to 8. Okay. When is price floor binding in nature? This is fairly okay. Price floor, you can give the example of MSP. So suppose the market rate of wheat is 50 rupees kg, and you put a price that no one can sell the wheat below a price of 40. This doesn't make sense because there would be excess demand at this price. This is the excess demand. This is the demand curve, supply curve, price, quantity. And if there is excess demand in the market, it would lead to increase in the price level. And hence we will get back to this point. So this price floor is not binding when it, okay, price floor is not binding when it is set. Okay, I'll write it when it is set below the equilibrium price level. Okay. Floor non-binding in nature. Okay, we have written this. We have explained this. Suppose that the government imposes a binding price floor in the wheat market. Now, if they are imposing a binding price floor, so it should be above the equilibrium price. So initially, suppose initially this was the demand, this was supply. This was the equilibrium price, demand, supply for wheat, quantity, price. Now they have imposed a binding. So I'll draw it with green. So this is the binding one. What would be the effect of this policy on the quantity of wheat bought and sold? So quantity of wheat demanded would be this. Quantity of wheat the people are trying to sell would be this. So the sales, the actual transaction, actual amount of quantity that are transacted in the market is minimum of quantity demanded, comma, quantity supplied. So whichever is less. So in this case, this much amount is being sold in the market. The suppliers at this price, at price suppose P naught, are willing to sell QS naught, but since the demand is QD naught only at QD at price P naught, so only this much would be sold in the market. Would the total revenue of the farmer increase or decrease? So initially the total revenue of the farmer was this area, the one in the red. Okay, so this is A plus B, whereas now the revenue for the farmers is the one in yellow. So this is A plus C. So if you look at it, what we can see is for the farmers, the A plus C is less than A plus B. So the revenue has actually fallen. So this would depend on the elasticity of the demand curve. If it is inelastic, so if price increase, total revenue would also increase. If it is unitary elastic, then price increase, total revenue remains same. But if it is elastic, then if price increase, total revenue would actually fall. Okay, graphically you can show it like this, and you need to mention these 3 cases. So we are done with this. Okay, we'll do 4th question A part. I'll just check how many questions are there in total. So 4th we have question till question 7. So we'll do 4th first part. Okay, we'll try to do 4th whole part, 4th question, and then the rest of the 3 questions we'll do in the next video. Okay, suppose that a market for tables is described by the following supply and demand function. So the supply function is QS equals to 3P QD equals to 200 minus P. Calculate the equivalent price and quantity of tables. Okay, you can solve this. This is fairly simple. QS equal at equilibrium, QS equals to 3P, which is equals to QD, which is equals to 200 minus P. So 3P equals to 200 minus P. 4P equals to 200. This gives you value P equals to 50. Now if P is 50, quantity supplied and quantity demand are 150. So we have this. Suppose a tax of 40 is placed on the buyers. Solve for the new equilibrium. Now, since rupees 40 is being imposed, okay, I'll draw the graph as well. But if it is not asked, you can just skip it. 3P, so the slope would be, this is a 45-degree slope. So it won't be a 45-degree slope. Okay, so when price is 1, quantity is 3. So it would be like this. And quantity demanded is 200 minus P. Quantity, this is price. Okay, so the price is coming out to be 50. The quantity is 150. Now, if a tax is being imposed on the buyers, 40 rupees. So the new demand function would become QD equals to 200 minus P plus 40. So the demand would actually fall. So it would lead to an inward shift of the demand curve. Now we can find the equilibrium quantity. So this should be equals to 3P. 200 minus P minus 40 equals to 3P. So 160 equals to 4P. So P is coming out to be 40. And quantity would be, putting in the supply function, quantity is coming out to be 120. So at this, the price, so this is the new old demand curve. Old demand curve is D1, S1 is the old supply curve, and D0 is the new demand curve after the imposition of taxes. Now we have found the quantity. We'll draw a straight line above this. So at 120, this quantity intersects the supply curve at the price of, we've already found, 40. So this would intersect the old demand curve at the price of, so QD is 120 equals to 200 minus P. So price is coming out to be 80. So now what you can see is, initially the buyers were paying 50, the sellers were getting 50. Now the buyers are paying 80, whereas the sellers are getting 30. So the buyers are having a burden of rupees 30, whereas a burden of rupees 10 is being imposed on the seller with the imposition of this tax. Now what happens to the price received by sellers, price paid by buyers, and the quantity sold? Quantity sold would be 120. Calculate the deadweight loss. So the deadweight loss is this area in yellow. So this would be half into base is 30 into height. This would be the tax only 40. So this is 600. So 600 would be the deadweight loss. Okay. So we have done fourth first. This is ninth. So we'll move to 10. Okay. What is the tragedy of commons? So this is a scenario in which case what happens is, so one of the example could be of sheep grazing the field. You must have heard about it. So suppose in New Zealand, what happens? Suppose if you have a pond and there are a lot of fishermen in it, and if everyone is working in their own self-interest, they will try to extract more and more number of fishes from the pond. And if you are extracting more and more number of fishes, it would actually lead to fall in the population of fishes. And if the population of fishes fall, it won't be sustainable in the long term. So The people, individuals working in their own self-interest leads to overall deterioration of the public resource. So because the resource is public, which is accessible to all, so that's why it leads to more and more exploitation of that resource. Okay, now suppose Delhi Metro is planning to charge higher fares during rush hours than during rest of the day. Why is it proposing such a plan? Okay, so I'm not sure whether you have studied about the intertemporal pricing or not, but okay. So this happens because the marginal cost. Okay, just okay, I won't draw the diagram. I guess monopoly is not part of your syllabus, but it happens because the marginal cost during the rush hours, that is the operational cost, this increases. The operational cost increases, so they need to charge higher fares to ensure that there is efficiency in the market. Because the cost is increasing, so the you must know this principle at this principle, and the second condition is that MC should be greater than MR. The profit is maximized. So if the marginal cost is increasing, you need to increase the marginal revenue as well, so as to make sure that there is efficiency in the market. Okay, now coming to the C part. Explain in detail the market-based policies that government can use to solve the problems of inefficiencies caused by externalities. Explain the market-based policies can use to solve the inefficiencies caused by externalities. First, you need to tell what externalities are. Okay, I hope this would be externality you would know by now. Now, the inefficiencies caused by externalities can be solved. You can refer the Coase theorem here, that if they have well-defined property rights, if individuals have well-defined property rights, they can come into an agreement. Well-defined property rights, they can come into an agreement by bargaining such that the outcome is efficient. Also, suppose we are talking about smoking of a cigarette. So if I don't smoke a cigarette and a other person is smoking in my face, so it is actually a negative externality, or they are polluting the environment as well, so it is a negative externality. So what the government can do is they can impose taxes on smoking, on cigarettes, so that, okay, you can draw the diagram as well, that this is the, okay, in this case diagram is not required because this was 6 marks only. Okay, and taxes, so if the taxes are being imposed, the gap between the private cost and the social cost actually falls, and that would lead to a efficient amount of cigarettes being consumed. So if they want to make sure that the consumption of cigarettes is zero, they can impose a very high tax. And on the other hand, if they want to subsidize, suppose vaccine or education or any other positive or merit good, then they can give subsidy on the same as well. So that would lead to more demand for the good. Okay, so we are done with this as well. Okay, we'll move to 11th. Okay, 11. Okay, so this is a very fairly long question. So, okay, I'll stop this video here. We'll do this 2023 paper in 2 parts. Part 1 till question 4. Then part 2 we'll do 5, 6, 7 questions. Okay, so in the next video I'll be doing these questions. Okay, thank you.